Good morning, good morning, good morning. We are still in the post-verdict period of the Karen Read trial, so it feels like maybe I should be saying, hear ye, hear ye, hear ye. Because yesterday we went through quite a few statements, but we didn't get to all of them because attorney Alan Jackson responded in the middle of stream, so we switched gears and took a look at what he had to say, firing back at attorney Brennan, because there was still apparently so much to say about this case. But it's Wednesday, it's June 25th, 2025. We are about a week after the verdict, or we're coming up on a week after the verdict a little bit later today, like to the hour. We're going to talk about the jurors today. And then I think, a week after the verdict, we will start seeing the comments and things to shift attention. We know that the Diddy case is going to be moving into closing arguments. There are other trials getting ready to start. So I anticipate that we will be moving to other cases next week. We have lots to talk about in the Kohberger prosecution, but I do want to see what the jurors have to say, because not all the time do we get to see the jurors speak out in a case. They don't always want to. And I love getting to see A, what they have to say, but B, the transparency of this is what we were thinking. This is how we were thinking. This is what we were doing. So we're going to talk about the jurors today, and then we have a members only later today. You guys will get all of that information and the links in your member spaces. So members, I will see you later today. We have lots to talk about. We have stories I have promised, and we will get to that. And then the rest of the week, I am not streaming because I will be on the road to go see my kid perform. He's been gone. For those of you that are in the chat regularly, you know that he is marching DCI. He does color guard. So we've had some stitches. We've had some stitches, but no serious injuries. And I can't wait to go see their show kickoff before the summer marching season starts. So I'm very excited. I haven't seen him in a month since I dropped him off. I'm just like, I'm ready to go see my kiddo. So that's what I'm going to be doing later this week, because I get to see him perform. And then it'll be a few weeks before I get to go see him perform again. It's going to be hot as anything has ever been hot. So yay for us. Summertime activities. But I'm just very excited to go see him. His corps is kicking off with two other corps that I very much enjoy. So I get to go see the opener for Cavaliers, for Carolina Crown, and for Phantom Regiment. And I feel like that's the only way that it's appropriate to say it, even though he's not marching for Phantom. There is only one way. There is only one way. And then we will be back next week. A lot of you are saying, has it really been a month? Yeah, he's been gone a month. He's been gone a month, and he will be gone until the beginning of August. So it is what it is, but the summer gets really busy with kiddos and family and trials and mom life and all of the things. And we do our best to balance it. So, I saw the virtual juror said, so I know T's thing is DCI, just curious, G's thing. G actually does play an instrument, and some of you will understand. I swear this isn't slander. Some of you might take it like slander, but if you know it's true. When G started playing an instrument, he picked trumpet. And I was like, okay, I'm more of a drums girl, but okay, go brass, go off, I guess. Why did you pick trumpet? Do you know what this child said to me? It's the loudest, and I can be annoying. Well, sir, you were clearly made to be a trumpet player. You were clearly made to be a trumpet player. It's the loudest. It's the loudest. And it can be annoying. Fantastic, sir. Fantastic. I also think he was a little bit influenced by The Princess and the Frog, because his favorite character in that movie had always been the alligator, Louis, who played the trumpet. I also very much, all of you are like, he's definitely a trumpet player. I know. All the trumpet players are like, yes. I saw the comment go by really quick. Former band director, Anna, yes, trumpet players are built different. Yes. Yes. I also, we listen to a lot of Dave Matthews music, so he's gotten to hear some excellent trumpet playing from Rashawn, and we just love. So trumpet players built different. Griffin loves trumpet. He also likes drawing and coding and, well, playing Minecraft with his friends and being 13. 13 is a spicy age. Travis wasn't as spicy at 13. Griffin's a spicy 13. Spicy 13, which is fun. As we were traveling, and then we're going to get into what the jurors had to say, as we were traveling to California, we were going through security, and they ask kids their name or other questions. And my 13-year-old looks at TSA as we are going through security and is like, I mean, why do you want to know? And I'm like, oh God, what is he going to say next? And he's like, I was just asking your name. He's like, I don't know if I want to tell you. And I was like, oh boy. I was like, hey buddy, we need to get through security. You need to tell them your name. So could you just? And he was like, I don't like telling strangers my name. And I was like, oh, now we're just being sassy. And the TSA agent was incredibly patient and was just like, I understand that. And he was like, Griffin. And then he walked away. I was waiting for him to be like, why do you need to know my name? Are you concerned they're not my parents? I was waiting for him to just keep going because he can clock a situation so quickly. And I was like, Griff, where are we going with this? Because again, he's 13 and he can clock a situation and he's a little too old. I'm surprised he didn't ask, am I being detained? I'm surprised he didn't ask. Why do you need to know? Who are you? Why you need to know? Why are you asking? I'm surprised actually he didn't say I need to ask my attorney. I'm surprised. I am surprised. And then I was just explaining, I'm like, buddy, I love the spice. However, when we're going through the airport, it's one of those things that's just going to really stress me out. Like any other time, it's funny. When we're going through the airport, can we just answer the questions for the people in the uniforms at the airport and just like get through the airport? But there is no telling a 13-year-old what they are or are not going to do. There is no telling them. And of course, if my oldest was there, he would start answering for him and I would be like, no, don't do that. But TSA, thankfully, our home airport is generally not crazy busy. So there is a little more grace and patience than if you're at like an LAX, right? People aren't as spicy with TSA leaving out of my home airport. At LAX, every time I see everyone that works at LAX, they look like they have had the most horrific day. And then I see how some of the passengers behave and I'm like, I mean, valid. Everyone is tired. Everyone is traveling. Everyone is stressed. And unfortunately, those that work at the airport tend to see the worst of how people behave in that way. And I feel for them. But Nashville's pretty chill. And now a number of the TSA agents just recognize me by face because it's not that big of an airport and I am there frequently. So that also helps. So, and generally people going through Nashville are pretty chill. Or they're leaving Nashville on a Sunday and they're too hungover to be spicy. They're like, get me to somewhere where I can sit down, which is fine. But it was a moment. So yeah, G has his things and he's ready to go see brother too. He actually misses his brother. I think the cats are really mad. The cats are really mad that we don't get to take them, but it just is. They come running when Travis is on FaceTime though, which is really fun. Are you guys ready to talk about the jurors? And then we've got lots to talk about on members only today, but we need to get through these juror interviews because we didn't get to go through the juror interviews yet. And so we're going to do that today. We'll see what else. Well, there's probably nothing else that's going to pop off. We don't have a ton of time today. We will get through the juror interviews. Next week, we will be getting into Kohberger. There are a lot of cases that I've been covering regularly that we need to catch up on, and that's what we'll be doing. And then we have, well, Koberger is supposed to be starting, Adelson is supposed to be starting, and we're going to have to figure out how we are doing those two things, but we still don't have a ruling in Koberger on the motion to continue. So things are kind of up in the air. So for all of you that are like, Emily, what's next? Well, we're going to catch up on the cases we're not caught up on, and then we will see what's going on with the live trials. We will see. But we have to finish the jurors. We were going to cover Koberger today, and then we didn't finish yesterday. So we will get there. We didn't finish. So we will have to get to Koberger next week. Also, the judge hasn't ruled yet, so we've got a minute. Maybe by the time we get to next week, we will have a ruling and we can go through the hearing and the ruling together. But everybody, when we voted yesterday in the chat, everybody wanted to just push the jurors till tomorrow, finish with Jackson's statement, and just finish up this week, kind of doing a decompression after all of the trial, and then move on to other topics next week. Some of y'all are like, I'm still ready to talk about all these things. And some of y'all are like, can we move on to another case? So I get it. We're trying to balance the both. So next week we'll be moving on. Do not worry. We're finishing up the Reed case this week. There's not going to be a appeal. I don't think we'll hear more from the attorneys. We're getting kind of, I think, to the end, but I will reach out to the lawyers. The law nerds are very much ready to talk to the attorneys, and we will fit that in if we can. It's not going to be till after 4th of July just because of my travel. So just all of it. I am really looking forward to going through some of the juror stuff. I have pulled a lot of it. I haven't watched all of it, so we're going to go through that together, and then we'll see where we get. Who knows what time we'll have, but I'm going to drink coffee while we do this because I need to drink coffee while we do this. And let me know where you're coming in from, what you're drinking, how you're staying cool, because I just looked at all the heat advisories in my area. And oh boy, it's spicy. It's just spicy weather this week. Law nerds, are you ready? Let's talk law stuff. Are we ready? Let's go. Hey there, I'm lawyer and legal analyst Emily D. Baker, and this is your go-to destination for live court coverage. I break down the law, the strategy, and the evidence in real time, so you know what's happening. No law degree required. So join the law nerds in the chat. They're here for the facts, not and let's get to court. All right, y'all. As we get into these interviews, I'm Kelly and I Grow It said, will you be covering the other MSP case? I covered the Birchmore case a little bit at the beginning. Here's what's going to be different is because federal court, we can cover some of the documents, but we won't see that trial unless, and I'm sure there will be people sitting in the courtroom. But yes, I will keep an eye on the documents and what's going on because there's going to be overlap from this case. So yes, I'm going to be keeping an eye on other Massachusetts cases because there are multiple other cases that are going to entwine with this case. And with Trooper Proctor getting fired and the rest of it, there are going to be legal ramifications and legal fallout to that. And so I'm going to be keeping an eye on those so we can take a look because the ripples, sorry, my hip is just, it's spicy at me. It's like, girl, you were dancing way too much. The ripple effects of the federal investigation, Trooper Proctor, and the rest of it is going to be felt across multiple other cases. So it is my intention to keep an eye on that for sure. Part of it, though, is that as we are doing the Koberger case, assuming that starts on time, those things are going to be on the Emily show where I'm going to be doing updates on the Monday show. So they might be a little slower, but it is on my list for sure. And Hazen, thank you for the gift of memberships. For everyone who's just becoming members, we are doing the members only live this afternoon. So you will see a link in your community tab on YouTube. That's going to be at 2 p.m. So you'll see the link there and you'll be able to join. So am I going to any of Travis's Illinois shows? Yes, I am. Lizeth asked, will you be covering the H3 copyright lawsuit? A couple of you asked me about it yesterday. I will not be covering it anytime soon, but it is on my docket because I'm looking at the things we need to catch up on, and I'm like, okay, we're almost at the end of July, but it's on the docket. Those cases are going to take a while. So it's going to be on the docket. There is so much else I've got to catch up on that I've been promising y'all I'll catch up on. We can't jump the line of all of the other cases, but I did put it on my docket. So it is there on the docket. So, Buzzy Brain of Bees said, me yesterday, reading mode, my life has changed. A lot of you were like, wait, there's a reader mode. In just about any browser you have, you can put on a reader mode, and it just kind of scrapes everything off. Not scrapes it, but it minimizes the website so it's much easier to see. It is so fantastic, and I just love it. So no matter what browser you're on, you can find some type of a reader mode, and I love it. I also love our Lauder. Where did it go? Who just disclosed that they had an Otter Pop for breakfast. Wednesday said I had an Otter Pop for breakfast. I'm ashamed. First of all, no shame. It sounds to me like hydration and electrolytes and a sweet treat all in one. Nobody says what time of day sweet treats have to happen. Nobody has rules on when sweet treats have to happen. So no shame. Also, it's hot enough that is a completely acceptable breakfast. The only reason I'm having hot coffee for breakfast is one, I didn't feel like throwing ice cubes in it at my house. And two, my throat and voice are still a little sad at me. So, no, breakfast is just a good thing. Dave said, my daughter is also an Emily D. She's also a band member, but is a drummer. I loved playing drums. And then some of you know why I switched from drums to color guard when I was in high school. I think I've told that story on Members Only. We've talked about it. All right, let's talk jurors. Yesterday, we started with the juror Foreperson written interview and print media interview, or a blog interview. I don't know what are we calling it, but yes, print interview. Today, we are going to take a look at the video from the Today Show, and then I think there is another one. So we will keep an eye out on the other one. But again, the juror statements that I've seen from the Foreperson are largely the same, and so we're going to go through this video, and then we will move into other jurors, because there are lots of other jurors that have spoken. And as I did yesterday, we're going to move, or for me, past a bit of the commentary and just into what that juror had to say, and take a look at what the Foreperson had to say. The thing that stuck out to me about the Foreperson is that even when we were done with the juror forums, what we saw in the print interview yesterday from the Foreperson was how mindful they were of the other jurors with them. And the other juror, here, let me just pull it up again. All of you, allow me to digress. Wait, where did my link go? Allow me to digress for just a moment as we talk about this interview. I just wanted to pull up the hesitation moment. It's that when the jury indicated they had a verdict and then said, wait, no, time out, just kidding, we don't have a verdict, game off, game on. It was over lunch that the Foreperson said that another juror had doubts. And at lunch, the Foreperson told the Boston Herald, I asked, are you okay? And the other juror said, do you think I can take back my vote? And then other jurors got nervous, and the foreman added, but in 20 minutes later, he was like, okay, guilty of the OUI. So it seems that the Foreperson was mindful and compassionate to the other jurors and their thought process and how they were feeling. Some four people would probably say, we've already voted. It's been signed. It's done. You'll be fine. Like, you'll be fine. We already came to a conclusion. The fact that the Foreperson was like, no, let's talk about it more. If you want to talk about it more, is incredibly kind. And that's not something I think we see in all juries. I've had juries that are impatient with each other, and that their complaint after jury duty was that some jurors were impatient with one another, and some were like, I don't understand what everybody's problem is. We're doing it this way. And that's not great, but I can see how that can happen when you put 12 people together. You got one person who's like, what's wrong with all of you? It's obvious that it's this way. It sounds to me like the jurors on this jury, and the Foreperson in particular, was like, let's see how everybody's doing. Let's make sure everyone's good with where we're at. let's talk it out, right? Very demure, very mindful. We love that. And so allowing the jury their time is something that was important to their process. And I think that that's really a nice thing to see. And getting 12 people literally called in randomly for jury duty to work together well and treat each other well is lovely to see. It's lovely to see. And I'm happy for it. It's one of the reasons I want to cover the juror interviews, because while a lot of the times you only hear from jurors that don't work well together or didn't have a great experience, what I think we're seeing from this jury is a lot of jurors who worked together well and who were considerate of one another and were considerate of the time it took to talk it out. And after the amount of time they were in trial, it seemed that nobody was rushing each other. And I think that that's really lovely to see. So let's get to juror number one's interview. And juror number one ended up being picked as the foreperson directly by the court. The court did that last trial as well. This might just be a thing specific to this judge that it's juror number one. It might not be, but in this case, well, you guys will have to let me know, because we've seen the foreperson already talk in print. We're going to get to see the foreperson speak on screen. The foreperson has asked that their name not be disclosed to the media. So I will be calling the foreperson juror number one or jury foreperson, foreman. So that's what we're going to do. If that works for you, that works for me. Hopefully it works for you. The Today Show is going to tell us that they're talking to the juror. They do a little background of the case. We have seen the background of the case, so I'm going to jump forward to where we hear from the foreperson, because that's really, we don't need the road so far regurgitated by every single media outlet that wants to do it, because we know how we got here. We know where we're at. We saw all of it.
And we're joined now by the jury foreman in the retrial, also known as juror number one. And sir, you've asked us and we've agreed to keep your name private for confidentiality reasons. So with that, we say good morning. And can you just take us into this jury room and how the jury came to the conclusion it did?
Collectively together, we looked at all the evidence that we was presented with, and we made our decision off of that. We didn't, at first, some had their own personal opinions.
Okay, just have to pause real quick. Chat, he is a father of 3 and married. Sir, the chat's a big fan of justice, and just absolutely besotted immediately. Besotted immediately. So, sir, congratulations to your family. The chat is immediately in love. They've heard nothing that you've said, but that's okay. What he said was, we looked at all the evidence. We looked at all the evidence, which we love. We love. I know, chat. I see you. Chat's immediately like, sign me up for jury duty. Sign me up for jury duty. Chat's like, you mean we get to sit and have lunch together for 9 weeks? Sign me up for jury duty. Sign me up for jury duty. All right, I'm going to back up so you can actually hear what he's saying. We're going to do that one more time. Chat, I appreciate all of you.
Jury came to the conclusion it did.
Collectively together, we looked at all the evidence that we was presented with, and we made our decision off of that. We didn't, at first, some had their own personal opinions on what the case should be or whatever, and was trying to go down like a personal feelings and stuff like that, and we had to stick to what evidence we had in front of us and go with that. So it was more or less just trying to figure out that part. And it took us a couple of days to really get the gears going, but when we did, it was smooth trails after that.
Sir.
And that's what jurors are asked to do exactly, isn't it? Some people came in with their own feelings. Some people were in their feelings, my interpretation. But we needed to consider the evidence. And I think one of the things I'm excited about is that he's like, look, he's not telling anyone they shouldn't have their feelings. It's like, look, you acknowledge it, and then we have to go through all the evidence. Right. That's exactly what they were asked to do. That's exactly what the jury is told to do. You can't reach a jury verdict. You can't reach a verdict on sympathies or passions. And that's the word in the jury instructions, y'all. You need to base it on the evidence. And he's like, look, people came in with their feelings, and then we had to go through all the evidence. And so it's just allowing the feelings to be heard and move through, so then you can get to the facts. And I think that that's very helpful. And when Massachusetts says, and there's times that I get frustrated with this too, Massachusetts says, and maybe they're right, maybe I'm going to rethink this. Massachusetts says in their jury instructions, like, we're not going to tell you how to deliberate, but don't just take an initial poll, go through all the evidence first. I think in some cases, that's going to be different. Some cases are really clear and you're like, okay, this went to trial, but what happened. Let's move on. But when you ask people to take a step back and go through all the evidence in an 8+ week trial, it gives the time for the initial emotion to move through, and you're not voting on just the initial emotion. So it gives it a minute. And I think that that's really helpful. Let's see. Allie said when the jury didn't come back with a verdict right away, people started freaking out that the foreperson was a plant. I was like, y'all, they would not have picked this man to be the plant. I mean, Tracy said, EDB, I was concerned learning that jurors thought she must have done something to be charged. The presumption of innocence seems to be gone. And I would counter that with, if some jurors thought that, and some jurors are going to think that. Some jurors are going to be like, we're in a courtroom. What happened? But even if jurors came in and were like, yeah, but come on, what did you do? At the end of the deliberations, they all came back around to, no, we don't have enough evidence of this. And that's why there are 12. That's why you have jurors to talk to one another and go, no, we're not deciding like that. You've got to get 12 people who don't know each other to agree on something very serious. So even if there's some that came in with kind of a side eye, like, what'd you do to be sitting in the defendant chair? At the end of the day, they were like, but the evidence doesn't prove this. So yes, some people like really go into trial and they're like, presumption of innocence, I guess. But in their heart of hearts, they're like, yeah, but why are you there? The fact that they can then go from, yeah, but why are you there, to, wait, what is happening, is important. And I think that's the focus. And it's through conversation with their fellow jurors. And that matters. So that matters. But there are always going to be conspiracies about juries. None of it is really as interesting as it is in any of the books that people write, because jurors need time. They need time to discuss it. And we've seen some high-profile juries come back with very fast verdicts, but that's not the norm. We should expect that they take their time, and we should want that they take their time and talk about the evidence. We should hope that they do, because they're taking it seriously. All right, let's continue on.
Sir, to that point, the evidence, was there a singular piece of evidence that seemed to move the majority of the jurors in the room, or were there multiple pieces? It
just was. it was the whole case altogether, all the pieces, testimony, witnesses, and it just a lot together. And people had questions. We used the evidence to answer their questions, and we didn't try to go down these rabbit holes where we're just getting lost in what all these other things that was thrown at us in court or whatever, and we just had to lock down and figure it out through the evidence.
Sir, I asked one of your other fellow jurors this question. It's a very fine distinction. In your opinion, is Karen Reed innocent? She didn't do this? Or is it just that the prosecutors did not put on enough evidence to convict?
Karen Reed is innocent, and she didn't do this crime. No one could prove that she did this crime, so I looked at her from day one as an innocent woman that needed to be proven guilty, and I don't think any of that was shown in this process.
And that's the presumption of innocence, right? The foreperson said, I came in believing that she was innocent. That's the presumption of innocence. And they needed to prove that she was guilty, and they didn't. But he went beyond that and said, not only do I just not think that they proved it, she did not do this. Which is different, because you will see some jurors come in and say, yeah, I still don't know, but not in this case, in other cases. Yeah, I still don't know, but they didn't prove it to me. Like, they didn't prove beyond a reasonable doubt. This jury, and we will see other jurors say this too, this jury didn't just say the prosecution didn't prove it. This jury has said repeatedly, she did not do this. So they are making the distinction really between the prosecution didn't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, and this person unequivocally did not do this thing. So that's the distinction that the hosts are asking about. And that's what he's answering. This jury clearly did not believe the experts for the Commonwealth that indicated a collision. Or maybe they did. Maybe they're like, yeah, they said a collision was possible, and we disagree. We also don't think it can fly into space. So you haven't proven it to us. But yeah, no, this was not proven.
Sir, to that point, if she didn't do it, who did?
That's not my job. So, I mean,
facts.
Something did happen to Mr. O'Keefe, and it's foul play or whatever you want to say, but there was no evidence to even through multiple witnesses and testimony by his autopsy and everything. There was still no one said to solid evidence that there was a collision or he got hit by a car.
So you don't.
That's not my job. Okay, sir, what happened? That's not my job. It's not our job. That's the police job. It's the job of the police to find out what happened. It's our job to tell you if what they said happened, happened. But he's like, that's not my job. Yeah, accurate. I really appreciate also that he's not going to speculate. He's not going to speculate at all. It's not my job to figure that out. And the evidence, including the autopsy, shows that John O'Keefe wasn't hit by a car. That's the evidence we had before it. Okay. This jury, that's the evidence they had before them. I just really appreciate that the jury is just like, yeah, no, that's not what we do. We were supposed to figure out if Karen Reed did it. And the evidence showed that John O'Keefe wasn't hit by a car. So Karen Reed didn't hit him with a car. And a lot of you are saying, I love that he was picked as the foreman. it seems that Judge Cannoni, and I don't know if this is in all of her cases or just in this case, just picks juror number 1. So by whatever alignment of the universes, this human ended up in seat number 1. He ended up the jury foreperson. And I think that's absolutely great. Because in his written interviews or in the telephone interviews he gave at the Herald, seemed to be very mindful of how the other jurors were feeling, but also seemed to be able to bring everyone back to, hey, we're not running down all these other ideas. We need to come back to what the evidence is. Amazing. Just absolutely great.
Don't think she actually hit him
You
with
know,
the...
everybody.
You don't think she hit him with the car at all?
No, go ahead.
You don't think she hit him with the car at all?
No. No, I don't. Not with the evidence.
Also, TV delays are the worst. TV delays are the worst. Are the worst. Because there's a delay going both ways for both of them.
That was put in front of me, and what we heard over everything, no, I don't.
Were you aware of just how high profile this case was? There were throngs of people outside in front of the courthouse. I know the jury officers, kept you away from that, but there was a big scream at the end when the verdict was read that was audible in the courtroom. How much did you...
This man was probably so stressed when the verdict was being read because the way that they were asking him questions was so damn confusing that he was like, can we just get through this? I feel for him so much. There was so much confusion. I've never seen a verdict get read into the record in such an odd way. Normally the clerk just grabs it. Maybe we watch it after this, but normally the clerk just grabs the verdict slip and reads the verdict out and says, is this your verdict? And then the foreperson says, yes. The Q&A back and forth was so wild.
Know about that, and how much, if anything, did that have to do with your process, your deliberations?
I was just going to go with whatever evidence showed us. If it was finding her guilty or finding her not guilty. And we were just going to go with the evidence. And at the end of the day, when I came in on Monday, I established to everyone, I just want everyone to feel like they're heard 100%, their thoughts, their process is being heard also in that process. And everyone felt at the end of the deliberations that everyone felt good about the decision that we all collectively came together with. So
in the end, there is still a mother who lost her son, Officer O'Keefe. What do you think justice would look like for the O'Keefe family?
Well, that's a question. I'm interested to see what he answered, but man, also not his job.
One looking into it further, but looking into it further with the evidence that you already have, and then you finally find a possible person, there's going to be the same complications of all this other stipulations of the evidence and everything else to go along with it. So it's just hard. And to put a mother through that, and a father and a brother and a whole family through that again it's a lot. Even me being there for 8 weeks and 9, and just sitting and watching the videos and seeing the tape and everything, it's a lot to see your loved one go through that. So
yes.
Well, it's a lot for the jurors as well. It's a community service that people as citizens are asked to do. And as a foreman in particular, no one gives you a manual and tells you how to deliberate. So thank you for your service. Thank you for being here, Mr. Foreman. We appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for watching. And don't forget.
All right. And that is the end of the Today Show interview with juror number 1 from the Reed case. What I appreciate is that one of the things he really highlighted was, at the end of the day, I wanted everyone in the jury room to feel heard. I wanted everyone's process to be respected. I wanted to make sure that all the jurors and this is me paraphrasing, but felt good about their verdict and feel like they had had a chance to deliberate and to process. And then when they ask him about what does justice for John O'Keefe look like, it's a really hard question for the jurors to answer because the jurors are not asked specifically that question. They're asked, given all this evidence, did this person that has been charged do the crimes with these elements? That's what they're asked. Elements, facts, did this person do those things? It's not on the jury if they weren't presented with a better case. It's not on the jury if the case wasn't investigated better. It's on the jury to decide what they're presented if it matches. And this jury said, no, it absolutely doesn't. And we've heard from other jurors, and we're going to get into that shortly, that the jury thought about the O'Keefes. But here's the thing. Jurors are told not to be swayed by sympathy. And so part of my discomfort with the questions of, hey, what about the victim and the victim's family, is that the jurors aren't really to consider that when they're deliberating. And there were definitely times in this case, let me know what you think. There were definitely times in this case where the prosecution leaned into that sympathy and leaned into what the O'Keefe family had been through. But they can't make their decision on that. And so it's interesting to see that the media is still asking those questions, because the only people who can really decide how to move on for the O'Keefes is the O'Keefes, because this has not been an easy process for them. But the responsibility of that also lays with the prosecution's office. And the prosecutors could have chose at the beginning not to prosecute. The prosecutors could have chose at the beginning not to prosecute for the charges that they did. They could have chose not to do a retrial. And yeah, the family would have been angry with that. I'm sure they would have. But sometimes that's your job as a prosecutor. I think it's better that they're angry at you for not moving forward on a case that you can't prove than to drag them through multiple trials. But that's just me. So there is another short interview with juror number 1. I'm guessing you would all like to see that one. I think it is a little bit of the same, but I don't think any of you are going to mind seeing a little bit more of juror number 1. Let me know what you think. I think I'm reading, Emily, you continue to read that correctly. Emily, you continue to read that situation correctly. All right. We're going to go through this second interview. And some of you are saying there's another print interview. If we get through the rest of it today, I will grab another print interview, but let's grab this other NBC interview. It doesn't surprise me that they have asked for multiple interviews. They're like, hey, well, we've got your contact info. Can we hear from you again, please?
Not guilty.
All right, let me get through the beginning of this intro to the case before we pull this up, because I just want to hear what the foreman has to say. I don't really need the road so far, but this is a view that we don't get to see often in the Karen Reed case. And I think it's a helpful one. This is the jury box. And you can see the podium right there. Let me move the closed captioning a little bit. You can see the podium right there.
Speaking out. How would you?
Emily, fail. Hold on. Let me get back to the view of the courtroom. Because did you see how small? Let's get back to that view of the courtroom. There are the chairs. I mean, at least the chairs aren't like pews. But this is where the jury was sitting. So juror number 1 is going to be all the way off to this far side here. This is the podium where the lawyers are arguing. The microphones you see set up are the microphones that were pointing out into the well. The camera that's behind the jurors is, I think there was a camera operator sitting there or standing there operating it. You had the bailiffs behind the bar there. And then you had the lawyers right here and the table with the prosecutors right here. It's such a small courtroom. Such a small courtroom. And we've talked about that, but it is an incredibly small courtroom. And one of the things I noted particularly, there's a lot of windows in this courtroom. I worked in Los Angeles where the windows in a courtroom were not something that happened, but there's windows in this courtroom. Do you notice that the windows are blocked where the jury is sitting? I wonder if they did that because people can walk around or if it just was getting too hot. Because I imagine it's not like that all the time, but it's an incredibly small courtroom. So I just wanted to take a minute to take a look at that shot of the courtroom because it is just so incredibly small. And then counsel table's like right up against the bench. Just tiny courtroom. June B says, it's not small, it's fun sized. The chairs at least have arms on them and are probably a bit more comfortable than some of the others. But that's a lot of people to put in a very small space. Just a lot of people. All right, let's continue on. This interview was posted late last night from the NBC Nightly News. Let's take a look.
Operations is speaking out. How would you sum up this experience?
Surreal.
The 45-year-old father of 3 who did not want to share his name said there were too many holes
in jest. Good on the partner of juror number 1 for saying you don't need to share your name because the DMs, the internet's bad, but the DMs would just be like, "Hey baby, how are you doing? Loved your interview. Wise. This is wise." It is like the internet does not need to know. I wish it would just be the internet being thirsty because at least that can be humorous. But the internet is not just humorously delighted. And that is unfortunate. And it is probably wise to be like, you don't need to find me. Because the way that we've seen some of the other jurors already treated online, I can only imagine how ugly it can get. But I would like to think we can just live in a world where the biggest worry is that the foreperson is going to have a very thirsty chat being like, we love that you want everyone to be heard. Integrity's our favorite. Can we just do that? Can the internet just not? But I'm going to just hope for a world where we can just be like, well, no, we don't need everybody just being too thirsty. All right, let's continue on.
in the investigation, and there should have been a thorough search of the home that O'Keefe was found outside of.
Right.
If I was in that house, I know that house would have been stormed. Someone's laying on someone's lawn, but no one goes in the house. It just doesn't make sense.
Reed had been...
Who talked about that in their closing argument, too? Who talked about that in their questioning, too? Who asked those questions during trial? Jackson. Alan Jackson asked those questions during trial. And at trial, when we talk about the things you are saying to the jury are the things you want the jury to go back in the verdict room or back in the jury room, back in the jury room and ask, you as the trial attorney are speaking to the jurors that are with you so that they can go back to deliberate and say, but what if it was us? because now that question's been asked in court. And so you have a little bit more support than if you're just thinking it, because I'm sure the jurors were thinking it too. But once the lawyer asks it, you can go, yeah, but you saw the officers go, no, we didn't have enough. We didn't have enough PC, blah, 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 blah. The jurors are like, but you would have found it if it was me. You would have found enough PC. You would have found enough PC. You would have been like, oh, there's a cup, good enough. So you can see how the jurors are like, yeah, I agree with Jackson's argument. Because even if they were thinking it, once Jackson said it, it allows them to say it in deliberations. It opens that door for that conversation.
Been accused of hitting John O'Keefe with her SUV outside of a
juror.
house party involving other law enforcement.
She was drunk.
Okay, I don't want to hear Brennan. I'm sorry, everyone. I didn't know Brennan was in this interview. Take a breath. Everybody's like, no, my blood pressure just went whoosh. I'm going to zoom. I want to hear from, imagine telling this juror you're disappointed in him. Brennan, you looked at these jurors for 9 weeks. Imagine.
At O'Keefe's death.
We just need to find justice for John, and so a mother can finally put this to rest.
Legal analysts say it's unlikely an investigation would be.
I'm the legal analyst here. We're gonna just continue on. That's it. That's all we ask this foreperson. How are y'all not doing like an hour-long sit-down podcast with this man? Because he clearly has more to say. We barely even got to hear his whole answer on that last one. I'm going to back that up real quick because that was so short. It was too short. But if you have the foreperson, how are you doing like a 5-second soundbite instead of, I don't know, a more thorough interview? So all of you are like, bring him on your show. I mean, my address, my email is public, but I'm not going to go tracking down jurors. If they want to talk, my email is public. I'm always happy to talk, but I'm not going to go tracking people down. And I'm definitely not going to reach out to NBC and be like, hey, because this juror wants their name to remain anonymous. And I absolutely respect that. But my email is public. And that's why my email is public. So let me back this up real quick.
One person and only one person. But the foreman, who was among the jurors who believe there was no collision, says he hopes investigators revisit O'Keefe's death.
We just need to find justice for John, and so a mother can finally put this to rest.
Legal analysts say it's unlikely an investigation would be.
NBC says, well, it's unlikely that another investigation will be open. However, that doesn't mean that a federal investigation won't have more to consider, but one never knows because the feds kind of move in silence. And for me, legal analyst me says, it is unlikely that anyone else will be charged with a murder. It is not outside the realm of possibility that there are other charges that could be possible. It's very difficult to try someone for a homicide that someone else has been tried for unless it is, unless they are co-defendants and connected in some way. So there could be other things. And Peapod Ferry said, but the federal investigation is closed. I mean, that's what they say. But I mean, is an investigation ever really closed? It's more like on pause, right? Like Dorinda. It's just taking a brief time out. Will anything else ever see the light of day? I don't know. But we will we will see. Also, the feds aren't going to give a statement. So the feds might have told the prosecutors and the defense that they can use the evidence, that they can hire ARCA. That part of the investigation is probably closed. The part of the investigation on the accident reconstruction and what have you, that part is probably done. I don't disagree with that. But does that mean that there isn't more ongoing? No. Because the U.S. attorneys and the FBI never really close anything. So with ARCA being hired, I can imagine a scenario where the U.S. Attorney's Office says, yes, this part is done, so you can hire ARCA now. We're not going to hire them for anything else. I can see that. But saying closed, I'm skeptical. And Brennan said, look, it's completely closed. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Because the FBI and the U.S. attorneys are never going to say that. I'm sure you guys have asked, has Peter's dad talked about this? I'm sure that Peter Tragos over at Lawyer, I'm sure his dad has discussed it. His dad was at the top of the U.S. attorney's office in his jurisdiction. I was a law clerk in the U.S. attorney's office. I am definitely not nearly as qualified, but I know people who are in different federal agencies. I have personal experience working with the feds as a state level prosecutor, because oftentimes the feds will look at a case and go, you guys take it. I don't think we would ever see the U.S. attorney saying it was closed. They might be done with the accident reconstruction part. So I have questions. Any type of I don't know. Any type of finality from the feds is sus to me, because they don't often work in finality unless they've brought an indictment. That's where I'm at. All right. Thank you, Miguelina. Could you grab me a archive link for that? Because this very much wants me to log in to something that I'm not going to log into, but I appreciate it. So if you see it, that would be great. You guys are telling me that there is another interview with juror number 1. We will grab it because there is a further print interview with the Boston Herald. We'll grab that in a minute. Yoli says, you're not the only one who said that. Look, man, some things just don't make sense. And if they don't make sense, we're going to talk about it. Dana said completed and closed are not the same thing, but I can imagine that the prosecution in this case might use them synonymously. All right? I can see that. Let's take a look. While we are grabbing that. Let's take a look real quick at the other juror interviews. We will circle back to the most recent interview with the foreperson. Here's my takeaway from the foreperson's interview. First, I know that people are nervous about juries. It's one of the reasons I wanted to go through some of these interviews. It's one of the reasons I am so appreciative that jurors choose to speak out, despite the vitriol and the disgusting hatefulness that you can see online. I can't fathom it. I don't understand it. People get called for jury duty. They get a paper in the mail and they go and take 8 weeks plus, because jury selection took like a week and then we went into week 9. So 10 weeks out of their life to make important decisions that matter to everyone. And then the online world, not here, outside, are disgusting to them. It's just fucking unbelievable. And it shouldn't be unbelievable to me, but it is abhorrent to me. Because we need citizens who don't want to do this to do this. If you are like, I want to be on a jury, I want to be on this jury, I want to render this verdict, that's not the right case for you. And criminal cases are rendering decisions that are very impactful. A not guilty in this case tells the prosecutor's office and the police, why are we here? What are you doing? And it tells the community that their fellow community members see them and are thinking about things the same way they do, and that they're not swayed by the empathy that they clearly have for the victim's family. And it seems to me, from all the things we've seen from the jurors, and let me know at the end of the day if you feel the same way, but it seems to me all of them seem frustrated that there weren't more answers. And that's what I've seen in the chat. Day in and day out, whether it's 10,000 of us or 60,000 of us or more, I see the push-pull frustration of this case does not prove that Karen Read did this, but why didn't you go find out what happened? And both of those things are true. And there's a lot of frustration, but jury verdicts speak very loudly. And I hope that the members of the community feel that their neighbors saw the same thing that they saw. And then when it gets into the online space and people are acting awful, it worries me for everyone who's going to get called for jury duty in a high profile case that are so impactful that good people will nope out. And that worries me. I don't want good people to nope out of jury duty. But also, I can't tell you that I would blame them. Because a lot of people do not want the spotlight on them in that way. And I guess one of the solutions to that for me is, let the verdict list be sealed permanently. Let the verdict list be sealed permanently in all jurisdictions. Just seal it. And if jurors want to talk, they can talk. If they don't, they can remain anonymous. Just seal the verdict, seal the jury list permanently. I'm sure the media would say that that would violate their First Amendment right to have access and transparency to the jurors. It's not hard to find a media outlet if you want to talk to them. I mean, that's not difficult. Just seal them. Just seal them all. As a matter of course, seal the jury lists. If jurors want to talk, they're allowed to. And that might help balance out people feeling like they might get thrown to the wolves that is the internet in some way. Is it a perfect solution? Maybe not. But it allows the jurors choice. They don't have a choice in getting called for jury duty. But they should have a choice after that. And that might need to be the balance. And I'd be okay with that. The media would probably shit themselves over it. But guess what? If you're an outlet that people like and trust and respect, and jurors want to talk, they'll talk to you. So, I agree with this too. Top Fire Industry says they can be a juror and just don't do an interview. I agree with you. My only caveat to that is in some jurisdictions, the jury lists are not sealed and the media can go find the jurors. And so I think it works better for me if the media can't go hunt them down. Because if the media is camping outside your house, which I have also seen people do to jurors, it makes it a lot harder to opt out of an interview. If they're sealed, I think it makes it a little easier for the jurors to choose to step forward or not. So, Lisa in the chat said it's simple. Don't look at social media. Lisa, I do truly wish it was that simple. Unfortunately, that's not always an option for some, because if your family's being threatened, if you're being threatened, you can't report that to law enforcement without documenting it. And so it becomes very difficult to maintain safety and ignore it, because some things can't be ignored, unfortunately. And things don't just stay online. If it was just people having different opinions, it would be different. Unfortunately, the things that happen online go real world way too often, and it is dangerous. If it's just like, I don't agree with you and I don't like your face, that's one thing. That kind of stuff is kind of easy to ignore, but the safety stuff isn't. And that makes me Sad. So enough of me soliloquying. Emily, you should talk more to the lawyer committees that do the things. I know I have told them I will more frequently, because I think there are things in my profession that can change and that lawyers can advocate for. And would you feel more comfortable? Chat, just let me know. Small polling. Would you feel more comfortable sitting on a jury if they told you when you came in, at the end of this case, the jury list will be sealed. You will only be known by juror identification number. Your information is safe. Would it make you feel better? Just let me know. All right, let's pull up this article. Thank you, Miguelina. I appreciate you. You are the best. Let me try to pull this up. Oh, it's trying to make me download something. Hold on. Let me see if I can pull this up in the other browser. All of you are saying yes. Right. All of you are saying yes. I would feel much more comfortable if I knew that I would be protected. And that's a really reasonable thing. Why won't this just reader mode it for me? Hold on. No, this is trying to download computer things, which I cannot do while I am streaming, unfortunately. So I cannot pull this up because it's got too much stuff on the screen. Do we have any other options, Miguelina? Sorry, this one is very difficult to read. Let's see if I can put this in reader mode. Nope, that didn't work. Thank you. Let's move on. We'll come back to the newest foreperson statement. I want to move on to Juror 12, who gave 2 statements to WCVB and has given statements elsewhere, but the statements I saw elsewhere all pretty much were consistent with what I saw on WCVB. So we're going to take a look at 2 different statements because it seems like one interview spliced into 7 different news segments. Shocker. And once we are done with that, we will go look at an anonymous juror that spoke really quickly, and then we will move on to Juror 11, who spoke a bit. We're not going to go into all of Juror 11's interviews. Juror 11 gave numerous interviews and was happy to do so. So we'll go into a few of those. But for now, let's take a look at WCVB and their conversation with Juror number 12. And we'll cut past some of the initial reporting. And again, I will link everything that I pulled for today's show. I will link in the description if you want to go see all of them. So, let's see.
Ben, good evening. Unlike the first 2 jurors that we've heard from who rendered their verdict of not guilty for Karen Read, this one, juror number 12, says during those 20 hours of deliberations, she changed her mind.
I felt like if they didn't pick me, they'd be fools because I didn't know anything about this case.
Personal trainer Janet Jimenez says before this second trial of Karen Read, one of her clients had mentioned the case, but she says other than that, she'd never heard of it. When she was picked to be juror number 12, she suddenly had a front row seat.
I couldn't help but see her because I was right. I mean, I think I had the best view in the house. She was right there. The defense was right there.
I'm here for the neon pink nails. I'm here for the, I'm sorry. I'm trying not to be distracted, but also in my brain, I'm just like, I haven't done neon pink nails in a minute. I need that. I need neon pink nails from Juror 12. But I think it's funny that Juror 12's like, if you don't pick me, what are you thinking? I know nothing about this case. Let's go.
Did you form any impressions of her?
No, like I said, I knew nothing about her.
Jimenez says she filled a notebook and a half as she listened to witnesses and studied evidence over 8 weeks. She says when it came time for...
I mean, same. I will, at some point, I will go through how many technical pages we have in the Remarkable at the end of this case. It's upwards of 1,000.
deliberations, she was open to listening to what the other 11 jurors had to say.
I was hoping that my fellow jurors could help me to go through all of this. So I went in with a very open mind, but definitely leaning toward that she was guilty.
Jimenez says what changed her mind is when she went looking for something in the more than...
I appreciate the candor with it. I appreciate the candor.
200 pieces of evidence.
Like
She
that-
won't say what that something was,
that is-
but says she didn't find it.
And it was one big part that led me closer to there's a lot of doubt here.
Jimenez says there were holes in the investigation, but she's
Shocking. There were what now? Holes in the investigation? I am shocked. I wonder, and all of you are like, Emily, we don't speculate. I know. I just have to wonder if she went looking for the report that said where Karen Reed told someone, I hit him. I'm just wondering if it was like, okay, where did they write this in a report? And I think the defense did a really good job of highlighting this was not in a single report that Karen Reed said, I hit him. But I do appreciate that the jurors are like, I wanted to go through this and I wanted to hear what the other jurors had to say. And that the foreperson made sure that everybody was heard and that everybody really did have time to talk.
stopped short of saying she believes someone else killed John O'Keefe or that there was a police cover-up.
I'm not there to say the defense's story was right or wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there could have been other circumstances that happened. So I think
Here's why I think that's incredibly fair. The defense doesn't have to prove anything. The defense gets to point out holes, but the defense doesn't have to prove anything. So I'm not here to say if the defense proved this or proved that is fair. There could have been other things. Do you know who that's a giant L for? The prosecution. It's a giant L for the prosecution when the jurors are like, well, it could have been the way the defense said, but there could have been more. Wow. Some of you in the chat have said there's more holes than the crime scene services cuttings in John O'Keefe's hoodie. Yeah. Lisa in the chat said, I love hearing the jurors' thought process. Me too. I really do. It is. It's their job to button up those gaps. It's 100% the prosecution's job to button that up. It is. Empowering Woman said, so thankful I found this channel. EDB grounds me. Amazing video. That is my job here. It is my job to help us all stand in what we know. Sometimes talk about what we don't know and why. And go from there. But, I mean, DRM said could have been aliens. Well, apparently Alexis is a spaceship. So yeah. Not speculative at all. It's in evidence that Alexis could be a spaceship. It's wild.
there was things that we saw that.
I appreciate, by the way, that they have not spliced into her interview as much as some of the other ones. Thank you, WCVB. This is one of the reasons why when I have to go through news coverage, local over national is generally my preference.
Or that there was a police cover-up.
I'm not there to say the defense's story was right or wrong. Do you know what I'm saying? Because there could have been other circumstances that happened. So I think there was things that we saw, that things that we heard, the evidence that could have fit that scenario. So again, that's the whole doubt thing.
Jimenez says
That's the whole doubt thing. Well, that kind of sums up how they were feeling, isn't it?
there is one part of the defense story that she did not buy, what that was and what she thought about the crowds outside, coming up tonight at 6.
Lucky Hamster said, EDB, you didn't know that the Lexus comes with the optional spaceship package? No, I didn't. But now that I know that, I mean, I'm here for it. All right. The come back at 6 for the rest of the juror interview. Look, I would be a terrible reporter. I'd be like, why can't we just tell them now? Which is why I don't do a ton of media, because when I need to say something and it's like, what you guys might not know, when I do TV, I'm often saying no more than I am saying yes, but you have a very small period of time to answer. And I can generally hear the producer if it's like, and you have 10 seconds. I hate trying to give an answer that might need more time in a minute and a half. It's just a challenge for me. It's not my preferred format. So, you know, I say no more of the time because I just rather be here with y'all. All right, let's go back to the second part of this interview and hear the rest of what juror number 12 had to say, because I thought it was interesting. It was a different perspective. And it was a juror who's like, you know what? I changed my mind and I was open to listening to the other jurors. It is unrealistic to believe that every single juror who comes in, even though they are told about the presumption of innocence, even though they are told what truth, what the evidence is and how they find the evidence and what guilty beyond a reasonable doubt means, there will still be jurors that come in and are like, okay, yeah, but for real though. But for real though. And I appreciate the candor of this juror saying, I was one of those jurors who came in and was like looking at you over in the defendant's seat. What are you doing? And then kept an open mind and changed their mind. I think it is much more realistic to hear jurors say that. And I appreciate it. So that's why we have not just one person deciding. Again, I keep saying that. I'm going to stop saying it now. No, I'm not. I'm probably not. I'm going to keep saying it because it's important. And having numerous jurors matters, but it's why jury selection is the most important part of your case. There are other parts that are important, but jury selection is the most important part of your case. On one of my trials that hung, I did not trust my gut on a certain juror. And that was the juror. And at the end of the day, all the other jurors were like, that one would not listen. Because in California, we get to talk to the jurors after the trial if they want to talk. And all the other jurors were like, immediately, it was so frustrating. It was so frustrating. And I get it. I absolutely get it. And then the defendant saw that it was 11-1 for guilt, and we ended up pleading. But I learned to trust my gut a lot better after that. Let's continue on. I think we don't always trust our gut enough. Can't overthink it. Let's continue. Oh, I told a different story. The virtual juror, I told a different story. I've had 3 hung juries with varying different results of what happened after. But if you guys are interested, we'll talk about it members only. I want to make sure we get through this, but that hung jury was not the one with the juror that the judge told me I ran out of peremptories. That was a whole different scenario. This was a judge that was lovely. And I was like, it'll be fine. It's like, I don't love this juror. Logistics. Should have trusted my gut. I was trying to be accommodating. Anyone get that? When you're like, I don't want to cause more problems. I don't want to have to bring in more jurors. It'll be fine. It won't be. It won't be. It won't be fine.
Ed, good evening. Just like the first...
All right. Just like the first time, we're going to zoom right back to this juror's interview.
deliberations room, she didn't feel that way.
Just seemed like it was in the stars that I was going to get picked for this.
Personal trainer Janet Jimenez says going into jury selection for Karen Reed's second...
Well, we can't say she's not happy to be part of the jury, right? Happy to be part of the jury. Happy to be.
Trial, she knew it was likely she'd be picked because she says she knew almost nothing about the case.
It's very interesting. I found it fascinating.
Jimenez says she filled a notebook and a half as she listened to witnesses and studied evidence over 8 weeks. She says when it came time for deliberations, she was opening to listening to what the other 11 jurors had to say.
Good.
I was hoping that my fellow jurors could help me to go through all of this. So I went in with a very open mind, but definitely leaning toward that she was guilty.
Jimenez says she did not believe the defense's story about a Google search for hypothermia done hours before John O'Keefe's body was found. She found lead investigator Michael Proctor's text messages about Reed crude, but not necessarily proof of a cover-up.
Do you think he planted evidence?
Interesting. Found Proctor's text crude, but not necessarily evidence of a cover-up. But also, did you think that there was a collision? Because I don't think, clearly you didn't think there was a collision, but they definitely point towards bias, and I wish they would have asked that. Okay, you don't think it pointed towards a cover-up, but did you think it pointed towards a closed-minded investigation? And I want to highlight very much that after the last trial, the defense shifted their strategy. And I've talked about this since we got into trial 2. They shifted the strategy towards pointing at the investigation versus trying to point at a much larger thing that the defense almost pulled the jury into saying, look, we showed you that she was framed. Yannetti's opening was memorable and stunning in a good way. Like, Yannetti came in trial 1 and said, Karen Reed was framed. We all went, holy shit. It's a big way to start. But it almost invites humans to say, okay, show me. And from the beginning of the opening statement, it can pull you in the direction, even though the defense has no obligation to prove anything. It can pull you in the direction of, okay, show me how. And I think pointing towards this investigation was fucked, not their words, mine, makes it easier for the jury to look at what the prosecution doesn't show, the witnesses they don't call. And I think it was a very good strategy for trial. Because just because there might be more there, you got to keep it simple. And we're hearing it from this jury too. You got to keep it simple.
Or tampered with the investigation.
I can't determine that.
Jimenez says what changed her mind is when
All right, I'm going to back up because I stepped into the middle of that sentence.
he was found. She found lead investigator Michael Proctor's text messages about Reed crude, but not necessarily proof of a cover-up.
Do you think he planted evidence or tampered with the investigation?
I can't determine that.
Jimenez says,
And that's fair too, because they weren't asked to decide that. They weren't asked to decide. But the fact that it's a question is doubt, isn't it? One of the strongest pieces of evidence for me in this second trial was the chart that Jackson fought to get in that showed where the glass was found. That visual was doubt. That visual right there was, this is doubt. Look at where the glasses were found and who found them. That chart, and fought through all the foundation to get it in. I thought it was incredibly smart. All right.
what changed her mind is when she went looking for something in the more than 200 pieces of evidence. She won't say what that something was, but says she didn't find it.
And it was one big part that led me closer to there's a lot of doubt here.
Jimenez says she was aware the court officers were trying to keep them away from the crowds outside. She says since the trial has ended, she's learned a few things she finds interesting.
I'm very interested to hear what this juror has learned since the trial ended. Nobody has really asked the emotion of the jurors. I think we'll hear it a bit more from juror 11. But how did the jury feel hearing that cheer go up? Because I know how I felt in the moment watching this stream. I know how y'all felt because you shared it with me. I wonder how the jury felt. I can also imagine how John O'Keefe's family felt. But I wonder how the jury felt. But yes, I want to hear what she's learned since.
Interesting, but nothing, she says, that makes her regret the jury's decision.
I don't want to be like, oh, should I second guess myself? Because I'm very comfortable with how I came to the decision. So I guess it'll be part of my story.
Well, that's not an answer. Damn it. I am underwhelmed. I was so optimistic. I'm going to back it up. I was so optimistic. Too optimistic.
But nothing, she says, that makes her regret the jury's decision.
I don't want to.
I want to know what she learned afterwards. What did you learn after?
Closer to there's a
I had
lot
to
of
back
doubt
it up
here.
again.
Jimenez says she was aware the court officers were trying to keep them away from the crowds outside. She says since the trial has ended, she's learned a few things she finds interesting, but nothing, she says, that makes her regret the jury's decision.
I don't want to be like, oh, should I second guess myself? Because I'm very comfortable with how I came to the decision. So I guess it'll be part of my story.
Damn it. I just want the answer. What did you learn? What have you found interesting? What did you do after the verdict came back? Did you immediately start Googling this case? Like, I want to know all that. That'll be part of my story. It does sound like she is going to write a book, doesn't it? And 100%, I agree with you. I know they waited until 6 for that. They waited till the next hour for that. That was just a trailer for something else. But I haven't seen anything else from this juror. Let's see them wrap the story. I don't think they come back to any more from this juror. I think it's just the wrap on that.
And for the first time tonight, this juror is shedding light on an incident that happened during the 5th week of the trial when 2 jurors had to switch seats in the
Well, why didn't you show her talking about it? Why is this part of the wrap?
jury box. She says that is simply because one of them was having trouble hearing.
We're joined now by the jury foreman in the retrial.
The jurors switched seats because one of them was having problems hearing. I'm going to need more information because there was more that happened. Because we saw the judge talking to them. I wonder if the juror that was having trouble hearing because of some of the other jurors were talking. I mean, I feel personally attacked by that. I don't think I could sit for 9 weeks and not chat with the person sitting next to me. I can't sit on a plane for 2 minutes without chatting to the person next to me. Kathy asked, did I miss the members only? No, it's after the live today. It's at 2:00 today, which means I have to be on time on the live so we can do our members only because we're going to do more next month as well because we missed one last month. We have lots of members stuff coming up next month. And some behind the stuff scenes I need to share. Oh, members. I have some photos to share with you as well that I have recovered from my parents' house. But I don't think it's just as simple as somebody couldn't hear. I have so many more questions about that. So let's talk about it. Did Juror 11 talk about it? Christy said Juror 11 talked about it. The talking to was about a few of them laughing. I mean, there's definitely times that we laughed during this. We laughed during this trial. And could you imagine how hard that would be? When stuff's ridiculous, can you imagine how hard it is to not respond? Lucinda said, didn't the judge tell the jury to control their faces at one point? Yes. Yes, absolutely. Okay, let's go look at the new article from the Boston Herald. Thank you, Miguelina, for grabbing that for me. I'm going to put it onto my other browser so we can do it in reader mode. And then we will move on to Juror 11, who I'm not going to go through all of Juror 11 has been incredibly open in talking about this case. I know I'm not going to get through all of Juror 11's interviews. If you Google Juror 11, you will find a plethora of interviews. We're not going to go through all of them. We're going to go through some. My choice on that was to go through the ones closest in time to the end of trial first and take a look at those. But I do want to look, where did my reader mode go? How in the world did it disappear? What is going on with my browser? That's so weird. Like just disappear. Okay, well, we're going to do non-reader mode, but I'll figure out the technology later. Streaming is dynamic. Yay for me. I'd rather go through the article and I'll fight with my browsers later. Emily, isn't it easier to just put on a trial? Well, no, not always. Sometimes yes, but not always. Because some days the tech is just fighting with me, but we are almost done with our own streaming software and I am very, very excited about it. Don't worry, members. We will be doing members onlys on that as well. All right, this is coming from the Boston Herald. Miguelina grabbed it. We'll put it down below from the Wayback Machine. Karen Reed, jury foreman, breaks silence. Shoddy police work, no justice for the victim. Is this from today? No, this is the older one. Wrong article. Sorry, Miguelina, wrong article. We need the one from today, which I am not. This is a different. Oh no, this should be it. Why is the photo is different? That's what happened. The updated article is a reskinning of this article that they just re-released with a new date. That's why. That's what they did. They took the article that we already went over, updated the date, and changed the picture and re-released it. It is the same content. All right. We are not going to go through that again because they just reskinned it. They will do that. By the way, Legacy Media, Emily, we've tangented. No, the new one is the same as this one. The context is the same. It's the same title as the one from 5 days ago. They just changed the pictures. And I think they might have added a new update to it, but it is the same. It is the same title. It is the same byline with an updated date. The one with the FBI headlines, I'll go take a look. But this one from the Boston Herald that we pulled up from today is different. Let me go look for a different one, which is why we don't do breaking news, because it delays us in grabbing the stuff that we're looking for. Let me look real quick. But what I have also found with Legacy News is they will go in and change the date and a thumbnail to update everything. But this new article that we grabbed from this morning is the same article from a few days ago with a reskinned picture. Let me see if there's a different new article. But that's incredibly common, and they will do it quite a lot. So let me grab this and take a look and see if it's a different outlet. This one's from People. All right. We found a new one. And I'm going to take a look at the one from People. All right. This one we will take a look at. Again, Emily, why don't you do breaking news? This is why. But today's been dynamic. And we stand juror number 1. So we're going to take a look at what People has to say. I also quite like People. I will say, of the outlets I've worked with, and I've worked with some outlets I really like. I've worked with some outlets that I have not worked with again. But of all of the outlets I have worked with, People is one of the best. Their corporate lawyers go through everything. They sometimes are not as fast to put things out, which I appreciate, because they put a lot of care into putting things out. And I love that. So we're going to go to this article from People. And my reader mode is not working, so apologies. Juror foreman voted to acquit Karen Reed of murder. Now he says FBI should reopen the investigation. We should start some type of an investigation onto what went on in that house, the jury foreman from Karen Reed's second murder trial said this week. All right. Let me embiggen this so I can scoot that over there. Days after Karen Reed was acquitted of the most serious charges she faced in her second murder trial, the jury foreman is speaking out and calling on the FBI to look into the case and get justice for John O'Keefe. In a new interview with the Boston Herald, so there is another one. We had pulled multiples that were reskinnings, but in a new interview with the Boston Herald, the foreman, who does not share his name, told the newspaper that he believes there are still so many holes that need to be filled. Does anyone disagree with him? Anyone disagree? Yes. Grace Bay says, I was right. There was a second Herald interview. Yes. And there's like 5 articles because they keep re-releasing the first one, which is why we grabbed the wrong one. Now that the FBI knows Karen Read is not a suspect, something happened and multiple jurors feel that way. Well, obviously something happened. Also, I don't think the FBI was investigating Karen Read, do you? Now that the FBI knows Karen Read is not a suspect, something happened. I think the FBI probably agrees with that. The foreman says he's calling on federal investigators to step in because no one local should be involved in the investigation, given the victim's ties to local police. It was lazy police work. I am so shocked that anyone on the jury felt that way. Please note my sarcasm. Shocking. It was lazy police work, the foreman said about the initial investigation, adding that we should start some type of investigation of what went on in that house. And what went on in the investigation. Reed, 45, was acquitted last week of killing John O'Keefe. We know that. O'Keefe's Boston police officer was found unresponsive in the snow outside of home of then Boston police officer Brian Albert in Canton, Mass. Let's see. Do we have any more? Since the final verdicts were read, multiple jury members have spoken out about the case and called for it to be reopened in order to find who was truly responsible for O'Keefe's death. Again, I don't know if they'll be able to go after that, but no one's been charged with obstruction. No one's been charged with perjury. Lying to federal officers is obstruction. I haven't watched any of the new Sherry Papini interviews, but lying to the feds is a problem. I hope that they continue to be salty about it. The foreperson told the Herald on Tuesday, "We just need to find justice for John and get his mother some peace." This jury has been incredibly compassionate. Carrie Ann in the chat said, how many jurors have given interviews so far? Today, we are going over juror number 1, juror number 12, juror number 11, and there's an anonymous juror. I don't know what juror number they are that's different. So we're going over 4 different interviews today. So I appreciate truly the compassion that this jury had without letting it change their view on the evidence. I don't always think that's an easy thing for people to do. So I appreciate it. Let's see. Some of you are asking me if I have seen Barrow's interview. I have not. And today we were focusing on the jurors. If I need to summarize some other interviews, I will do it in a podcast. Let's see. And then one more interview. This one is the newest one from the Herald from 8:45 this morning. So, Reed jury foreman appeals to FBI to reopen the murder investigation. This is the one you guys were talking about. We kept coming up with the reskinning of the one from 5 days ago when we were pulling it. Let's see. I'm sorry, you guys. We can't leave the picture on the screen and get through the text. I apologize, chat. But this is coming from the Boston Herald. Updated today at 8:47 a.m. Eastern. The jury foreman, and this is going to be repetitive, I think, of what we heard from people because people was going through this article. There are so many holes that need to be filled. Juror number 1 told the Herald Tuesday afternoon, now the FBI knows Karen is not a suspect. Something happened, and multiple jurors feel that way. Juror number 1, who first spoke to the Herald exclusively Friday, is now urging the FBI to get justice for John O'Keefe. It has been announced that federal investigators did look into the web of Canton and Boston police connections to the case and did not charge anyone. That has been reported. The FBI's Boston declined to comment on the juror appeal for a new probe. The FBI's Boston who? What is that word combo? The head of the FBI Boston field office? Also, the FBI doesn't comment on stuff like that. The FBI! The foreman has already said the unforgivable fact that investigators didn't swarm the house at the murder scene of 34 Fairview Road in Canton during a nor'easter is a glaring red flag in the murder case. Let's see. And that's the same quote that we saw. And then the interview that we saw. Oh my God, that's so for real right now. I have done this so often using books to prop up my my laptop or my microphone or whatever, like just for real. That's so me. I'm again so happy to see the jurors speaking out and talking candidly about how they feel about this case. The next interview we're doing is from a foreperson that asked to remain, a juror that asked to remain anonymous with NBC 10 Boston. They gave this interview in like shadow and I think with a little bit of voice alteration to remain anonymous, but still did speak out to NBC 10 Boston, who has covered this case. I'd been on Canton Confidential a couple times. In my coverage of this case, they had been very generous in asking if I could do that more frequently. And unfortunately, timing was just what it was. So let's take a look at this anonymous juror interview. I don't remember if we know the jury, if we know the juror number or not, but I will also link the NBC 10 interview with juror 11. It's like a 30-minute sit down with Sue O'Connell, and I will link that down below when we get there.
Everybody in that room was very smart and very committed to telling their story.
Another juror from the Karen Reed murder retrial coming forward tonight, speaking only with NBC.
Those seats look different than the other seats that we saw. This is not the same jury box. Is this just like B-roll of a different jury box? This is not the same courtroom. This is not the courtroom they were in.
BC Boston. During our sit-down interview, she explains the process of coming to that decision that Reed was not guilty of killing her Boston police officer boyfriend.
Great, can we hear from her? Wonderful.
Not guilty or guilty?
Okay, I want to hear from the juror.
We'll never forget this sound. The crowd outside the courthouse in Dedham last Wednesday erupting after the verdict. Reed found not guilty of murder.
It was overwhelming. There was so much grief and so much joy in that moment, and you really felt the weight of everything that we had done that day.
The juror wanted to remain anonymous. In fact,
I'm glad they asked a juror about the cheers that they heard in the courtroom. And I think hearing the joy and also having the grief is fair.
She says at first she didn't even want to be seated on the jury.
I love my job. I didn't want to not be there for a long time. Also, it's a huge case that everyone has really made their mind up on.
But this juror didn't, she says, until deliberations started more than a week ago after closing arguments.
That's fair.
Everybody in that room was very smart and very committed to telling their story and their version of the story, which more than anything led me to walk into that jury room with no opinion.
After about 2 months of being on the jury together without being able to share an opinion.
I think we started making a lot more progress when I got like huge poster board paper and then worked with other members of the jury to write down the definition of every charge.
Oh my God, I love that. They like workshopped the jury instructions. I will tell you what, there was a case where we went into the jury room after the jury had come back, and they had written out like a flow chart on the whiteboard that was in the jury room, where they had taken the dry erase markers and gone through it and just wrote it out so they could work through the elements. I really appreciated it. And they had left it up. It was really cool to see the way that they had worked through a case. And it was a case not nearly as complex as this. So for the jurors to be able to have something to write it out and go through and work it out, I really appreciate the conscientiousness. But when we talk about how long it took the jury to come to a decision. This is the work that they were doing. Okay, let's go through those jury instructions. Took over an hour to read. Let's go through the jury instructions and let's go through what they mean one by one by one. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love hearing it. I'm going to back up. It's either someone who has to give meetings. You guys are like, sounds like a teacher, or someone who has to give meetings to like their coworker presentations where it's like, this is the roadmap. But yes, love it.
Everybody in that room was very smart and very committed to telling their story and their version of the story, which more than anything led me to walk into that jury room with no opinion.
After about 2 months of being on the jury together without being able to share an opinion.
I think we started making a lot more progress when I got like huge poster board paper and then worked with other members of the jury to write down the definition of every charge. At the end of the day, this was an absolute tragedy for the O'Keefe family, and I hope that they find justice.
And by the way, you can find much more of our conversation with the Reed family along with complete.
I think everyone we've heard from so far who has chosen to speak has had tremendous empathy for John O'Keefe's family and also has said, this is how we came to our result. Fair. I also loved hearing how they broke it down on poster board, but also that's going to take time. Emily, are you just reminding everyone that juries don't come back quickly? Yes, over and over again. Are you guys ready to talk about Juror 11 a little bit? We're going to go to some of the earlier interviews with Juror 11. We saw some statements from Juror 11 yesterday when we covered that initial article that had information from the Foreperson and Juror 11. They were both in the same article. We're going to go to some of the shorter interviews with Juror 11, who has given quite a lot of interviews. That's not a criticism. It's just that we are not going to get through every single one of those interviews because you guys have also asked if we can take a look at Alan Jackson's radio interview. So we will see where we get time-wise. Yes. All right. Let us continue with Juror 11. And let me pull up that first one. I was trying to find the interviews closest in time to the verdict. So that was my goal in picking these particular interviews. There are plenty more, and we will link some of them as in the description box. Emily, there's too many words in your brain. We will link them in the description box below, but again, a noodly Google, very easy to find. This is, I think, the first interview I could find date-wise with Juror 11. So let's take a look at, this is about a 10-minute interview, and I appreciate that it's not like clipped and produced, it's just talking to her. Angela in the chat said, Juror 11, is that the Brazilian lawyer or lawyer in Brazil? Yes, it is. So, and again, lawyers, I think what the internet forgets, not the law nerds, because y'all are bae. Lawyers can be jurors. Lawyers can be jurors. So it's not weird to me that she has a legal education from Brazil and was a juror on this case. That is not strange to me at all. Lawyers can be jurors. All right, let's continue on.
Do you want to just tell us about the verdict and how you guys came to this conclusion?
Yeah, sure. So it was a very intense week. We are, at first, for me, I thought Karen Reed was actually maybe guilty of manslaughter in the beginning. But as the weeks passed by, I just realized there was too many holes that we couldn't fill. And there's nothing that put...
I also appreciate that she said, look, I was maybe thinking that she was guilty of manslaughter at the beginning, but then there were too many holes. I appreciate the candor of, I was wondering during the prosecution's case, but then went, oh, nope, there's too many. KS said, what does BAE mean? Before all others or before everyone else. It means that you guys are the best, basically. But it's okay. BAE. It's now old vernacular. I don't know what the new vernacular is. Is it that y'all are Ohio? I don't know. I don't. Internet slang from 10 years ago.
Her on the scene, in our opinion, decided to just drop John O'Keefe off. And the taillight, the injuries in his arm didn't make much sense that come from the taillight for us. The last witness, Arca, from the...
Amanda A., yes. Wait, Amanda A. said bacon and eggs. Yes. Yes. Exactly. BAE, B-A-E. Wait, Fluffy Buddy said Ohio is bad. I thought Ohio was good. Damn it. I can't keep up. I also try to say things in jest to my 11-year-old, and he just looks at me and is like, 11, Jesus, he's 13. Don't tell him. I didn't say play date. I didn't say play date. Is Skibbity good? Is Skibbity bad? We'll get back there. But I love that we got, we have another juror saying, I was leaning this way, but I kept an open mind. And then there were too many holes. I love it. And I think she's going to talk about Arca because we just want to talk about Arca all the time.
But as the weeks passed by, I just realized there was too many holes that we couldn't fill. And there's nothing that put her on the scene, in our opinion, besides just drop John O'Keefe off. And the taillight, the injuries in his arm didn't make much sense that come from the taillight for us. The last witness, Arca, from the defense, that made clear, they did a very good job, like showing us.
I thought so too. I love this. The last witness, Arca, made it very clear. Ma'am, yes, I thought so too. She's just a delight. Yes, literally, it's so wild to watch one of the jurors. And this was, I think, this is the interview I found that is closest in time to the jury. So I'm thinking probably before she even had time to look at what people were saying online, echoing things that we have been talking about for 9 weeks. And it's really interesting to see juror number 11 and the foreperson saying the same thing. There were too many holes to fill here. There is too much that we don't know. And I really appreciate the candor of, during the early prosecution case, maybe I was leaning towards manslaughter. And then you get to Arca. And this is why in Yannetti's opening last trial, you saw him say, wait for us. But you get to that last witness and you're just like, Arca made it very clear. That shocks me none, that Arca made it very clear. And I think the defense learned quite a lot, and the prosecution too, from what they saw briefly from the one juror that spoke after the last trial, saying they weren't sure if Arca was from the insurance company and they didn't know where Arca was from. And they were able in this trial to close that loop a little bit more and talk about, I still vaguely, who Arca was hired by, but also make clear that Arca wasn't hired by like Karen Reed's insurance company. Because sometimes lawyers aren't going to even think that jurors are going to ask that question because lawyers are so close to the case. But you know who else saw that? Brennan. Because Brennan was like, sometimes you guys get hired by insurance, huh? Okay, Brennan. Arca wasn't paid $300,000 though. So, you know. All right, let's continue.
Explaining all the technicalities, of everything. And yeah, we couldn't prove there was a collision and she was responsible for John's death.
Are you convinced she wasn't responsible for his death?
I am convinced.
I mean, they
convinced.
came back not guilty.
Yes.
Not guilty.
I really don't think she was responsible for his death. I think she dropped him off. If she back up fast enough to maybe touch him, maybe, but that was not the reason why he fell his back in a way that the way the cut was, the injury was. and the fracture was, I don't think that was from the car, because otherwise we would see much more injuries over his body.
So what do you think happened to him?
I think that's fair too. The injuries to the back of the head, if it was from the car, you would have seen other injuries on John O'Keefe's body. And the medical experts were all really consistent. So the interviewer asks, so what do you think happened?
It's a theory, like conspiracy theory type of thing, because I think she maybe back up and touch him somehow. Maybe he lost his shoes in this movement and got upset, and then she left and she didn't saw him. And so either he got out of her way or something, and maybe he lost his shoes in this process. But in my opinion, he definitely went inside and something happened inside the house.
Paula, you were getting emotional.
Okay, so she thinks something happened inside. And again, they don't have to decide as a jury what happened to John O'Keefe. Some people are going to be much more inclined to try to figure out what happened. Some aren't. And we saw that with the Foreperson. That's not my job. That is not my job. That is not my job. It's not my job to decide what happened. It's law enforcement's job to decide what happened. And what they didn't prove to me is that Karen Reed did the thing. And it's interesting to see another juror say, look, I've 100% thought about this and I still have questions. Fair.
What was going through your heart and mind after making that, tremendous decision?
Yeah, so I was happy for Karen Reed and her family. Of course, I think justice was served, but see John O'Keefe's family leaving the courthouse was melt my heart. I'm a mother, and I saw her pain through all those days. And I just want to tell them it's not our fault that Karen Reed is not convicted, even if there's any chance she's guilty of something, of hurt him somehow. The common author and the investigators didn't do their jobs to prove that to us. So we couldn't charge her with anything. And I really, really hope.
I think that's fair.
There is a way for the case to be reopened and they can investigate again and find who actually did that to John.
But you were emotional at the end.
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
It was because I was sad for the family, because I feel like great for Karen Reed, but horrible for the family. He seemed to be a very nice guy, the story with his nephews and niece, and was alive. So I feel bad for them, and I really want them to get justice for John O'Keefe.
Was it a poor investigation?
Oh, I feel for her so much because you can just feel the weight of that. And when we talk about giving jurors time to deliberate, I just feel for her in saying, look, I'm a mom. I feel for his mom. He seemed lovely, but those two things aren't mutually exclusive, right? Something horrible happened to John O'Keefe. But the jury's like, but Karen Reed didn't cause that. And that's fair. It's fair. And in fact, it's exactly what they are told, that they can't base a verdict on sympathy.
In my opinion, yes. Too many flaws, too many holes that we couldn't fill in. No reports, so many things, videos with glitch. I don't know, felt a little not correct, not precise.
Fair.
I mean, they are police officers. They know what to do in investigation.
It felt like it wasn't precise. Fair.
And with too many pieces were missing.
Well, you said you were first thinking manslaughter in the beginning. What changed your mind to not guilty?
The process, as they show us that things don't connect to each other. The injuries don't connect with the taillight, the glitch on the video of the sailport, the missing part of the video of the ring light in John O'Keefe's house was too many coincidences to be, straight her fault.
So the first trial, the jury.
Too many things. And again, the process. We went through the process. And that's why there is a process. Destined to be in the chat said this jury used their common sense. Yes, they were From the interviews we've seen, they were considerate, thoughtful. They were compassionate for each other. They were mindful of each other. They were empathetic. And they went through the evidence. And I think you can't ask more for 12 members of the community dragged out of their lives for 10 weeks and asked to make a hard decision. You can't ask for more than for them to be thoughtful and to consider the evidence. And it's fair for them to criticize the investigation.
Were deadlocked. They couldn't come up with a decision. Were you surprised that they brought this case again for a second time?
I'm going to back that up so we get the full question, but they are asking about the first jury. Once this jury has come back with a verdict, they are allowed to be on the internet, look at the case, look at what happens with the first case. But this is so fast that they're asking this.
Was too many coincidences to be, straight her fault.
So the first trial, the jurors were deadlocked. They couldn't come up with a decision. Were you surprised that they brought this case again for a second time? That they prosecuted her for a second time?
No, not surprised, because I have a law background from Brazil. I studied law. I worked a little bit as an attorney before I moved here, so I understand a little bit the system. I'm not surprised she was charged again. And we definitely didn't want to hang this jury. We were very positive that we're going to discuss everything as much as we can, because we don't want to. The amount of money spent on this trial made me very upset, and I'm sure made my fellow jurors upset too.
Do you think she was framed?
That's a direct question. Normally, I would very much dislike seeing jurors talking about the amount a case cost. It's not something they're supposed to worry about. It's not something they're supposed to consider. However, it's evidence in this case. How much was spent in this case is evidence. And it's allowed to be discussed because it's evidence. It's not speculation for this jury to be like, how much money was spent in this case? Because the aperture bill alone is crazy. It is. The jurors are taxpayers in Massachusetts. And Massachusetts is not shy in their taxes at all. So the Commonwealth knows that. I can't believe the Commonwealth wrote such a big blank check to Aperture, knowing that the jurors were going to hear about it. How can you not foresee that the jurors are going to be just outraged by that amount of money for that? I feel her. In a case where it didn't come up, I might feel differently. In this case, 100%. In this case, it's 100% appropriate to talk about. Because yeah, they spent a ton of money.
Hard to say. I didn't have a chance to look into the investigation outside the courtroom and everything that was said in the last trial. It's less than 24 hours since I started looking into those things. So I can't say she was framed, but maybe, I don't know. I don't know.
It's fair not to answer that. It's also fair to be like, I have questions. 100% fair.
Did you find it strange you didn't hear from the lead investigator, Michael
great question.
Proctor?
No, I didn't find it strange not hear from him, but I found strange not.
It's interesting she didn't find it odd.
Not hear from Brian Albert and Brian Higgins, because the owner for the house and the person who exchanged text messages with Karen Reid a few days before John O'Keefe's death. So I think was weird not hear from them.
Interesting.
Do you find it weird that the DA hasn't said anything at all about the case or the verdict? I mean, all he said was the jury has spoken, which you guys did, but nothing else.
I was surprised that they wanted the sentencing right away. I'm not sure if they're going to appeal, what's going to happen. I didn't have time to see what happened today through the day because I was out with my family. But I don't know, maybe they...
She's like, I also have children and a family, and I've been doing this for 10 weeks. I don't know. I've been with my family. Fair.
They're just going to give up and reopen the investigation.
At the beginning of deliberations, did some people think she was guilty?
At the beginning of deliberation, I don't know. We decided not to vote, not to say what we really think, and instead go through witnesses and the videos and the paper, the clothes and everything. So I'm not sure what they thought. But
that's incredibly fair. And the jury instructions in Massachusetts really tell you to do that. They say don't take an initial vote. And other jurisdictions don't word their instruction that way, but it's fair, because if you think when people initially vote, people are more hesitant to change their mind once they've stated an opinion. In California, that's really similar to an instruction that says don't initially state your opinion too forcefully, because it can become hard to change your mind, and the process of deliberation is to deliberate. But it's the same thing with a vote. It's sometimes hard to back off an initial position if you state it so forcefully. People, as humans, are hesitant to change their mind. I think we should be much more open to change our mind. We're humans. We only know what we know, and then we learn more, and then we can change our mind. Look, it's fair. Growing up, I didn't like coffee. How wrong was I? But it's fair that the jury instructions encourage them to look at the evidence first. It makes it easier for people to keep an open mind. And this jury did that too. They kept an open mind. And I really appreciate it.
But when we got an agreement of what charges we would eliminate it one by one, and then we got to the verdict.
Fair.
Was it hard to focus, or, with the pressure of the big crowds outside every day chanting?
They shouldn't have known about that.
How much pressure was that for you guys?
I didn't see people outside until, I think Monday, because the way the bus brings us to the back of the courthouse, only if you look to your right and you see maybe some pink shirts or something, but I didn't know it was that big crowd like yesterday.
I'm really glad to hear it, that the jury didn't know.
And we couldn't hear anything. They covered the room so we couldn't see through the window. And through the whole process, I didn't hear anything inside the courtroom. None of us did.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like this wasn't...
They didn't know how big the crowds were. So when asked, did you feel this pressure? They were like, what pressure? We didn't know about all of that. Fair.
Wasn't that difficult for you guys to reach consensus here? Was it difficult to reach this decision, or not really?
Well, I can speak for myself. For me, it wasn't. For me, I had my opinion formed before we get in there. So some people might thought differently, so we had some discussions, of course, but I can't talk for other people.
But it doesn't sound like it was very heated, and were people fighting, or was it?
Yeah.
What question is that?
Fight. We are a respectful group of people. We got along very well, and we listened to each other's opinion. I can't say much what happened inside the deliberation room. The judge told us not to talk about it, but of course there were discussions of our opinions and the proofs, and let's look into this, look into that, until we got to a consensus. But nothing heated, no.
Did you make much of her?
I know, they're just asking the headline questions, not the curiosity questions, right? They're asking the headline questions. And here's the thing that I guess makes me happy about this jury, but also makes me sad, is that the questions are, but weren't you guys fighting? Weren't you guys doing this? No. They took their job seriously. They respected each other, and they respected the process. And over and over and over again, that is what I have seen jurors say. When we have asked you guys in the chat about your jury experience, that's what you've said. That for the most part, your experiences have been that you took it very seriously. You felt the weight of the responsibility of what you were asked to do. You talked to one another. You respected each other. Reasonable minds can differ. And when you take 12 people and ask them to do this thing and give them time and space to do it, that they treated each other with respect, and they listened to each other, and they had conversations, even if they all didn't agree with a thing. It's sad to me that part is what's surprising, because it shouldn't be. Because that's exactly what they're asked to do. And that's what so many of your experiences are like as well. They feel the weight of what they're asked to do. They're being asked to sit in judgment of the actions of another member of their community. That's a heavy ask. Of course they took it seriously.
The videos that were played of her saying, well, maybe I might have
I'm glad he asked
him,
this, though.
Her almost admitting that, well, maybe something happened.
Yeah, that's where I take my theory from. Since like she woke up thinking, oh, maybe I hit him. So this idea come from somewhere in her mind, right? So maybe when she back up, she hit something, the curb or him or something. I don't know. But definitely his injuries are not consistent with the tail light damage. We do not believe the tail light, the way that was presented in the Sally Port on that day, it's not the same way that we saw in the videos of the car coming out of the Meadows in the morning. I don't think the car killed John O'Keefe, no.
What?
I think the defense did a very good job of making the arguments about the diffusers, because she said the car coming out of One Meadows in the morning and the car in the Sally Port is not the same. Fair.
Point in the trial did you start to think she was innocent?
Maybe like 3 weeks ago, after, when they had the police lab bringing DNA, they found a little trace of DNA here and there, but they also found 2 males' DNA here and there. So maybe there was more people involved on that. So that's when I started shifting my mind to completely not guilty of killing him at all. And the OUI was the only thing we can't deny, because she said on the video she was drinking, and there are videos of her drinking, counting of her drinking. So we couldn't let that pass.
They followed the evidence. Fair. She said she was drinking. We saw the video of her drinking. We saw this, we saw that. Fair. Okay. Fair. That's what they proved. And I think for Karen Reed, I don't know if she'll regret the interviews that she gave or not. It's done. You can't really fuss about it too much. But I think Karen Reed is probably happier having this done and doing a year of probation, because I imagine Karen Reed feels like the last 4 years of her life she's been on some form of probation waiting for this case. So I don't know if much will change, but I really appreciate that she's like, look, we followed the evidence. And I have seen some online. I stay off, other than chatting with y'all, off of a lot of it. But I've seen some talking about whether or not this was jury nullification. And here's my thoughts on that. The jury said, we had evidence of an OUI, so we convicted her of an OUI. We had doubt as to everything else, so we acquitted her of everything else. The concept of jury nullification comes up when there is overwhelming evidence of a thing, and for other reasons, the jury goes, no, we're not doing that. And we've seen all this evidence. We think as a jury that they are guilty, but we refuse to find them guilty. This is not that case. This is not jury nullification. This is not a case where the jury, for other reasons, said that Karen Reed is not guilty in the face of overwhelming evidence. And even if they had gone not guilty on the OUI, I still wouldn't think it was jury nullification, because there's room for them to be like, okay, but they didn't even test her then, and they didn't even see her driving. There are other reasons. So when people have that conversation, I think they are using it in a more colloquial way, but it's in the face of overwhelming evidence that a jury decides that they will not convict. Not when there's questions, not where two sides it could be this, it could be that. No. When there's overwhelming evidence. So this is not that case, in my opinion. So I am not going to talk about it too much, because I really don't see it that way. There were a lot of questions here, and when we get to Brennan in closing argument saying things like it's possible, well, possible is not beyond a reasonable doubt, is it? I don't think so.
Anything else, Paula? Like, what's your message, or what's the lesson that you learned in this process? Or,
well, my first time being a juror was an incredible experience. Really, I really enjoyed being there. It wasn't a burden at all. The deliberation part for me was a little overwhelming.
Ma'am, I have been with you. I have been with you this whole interview. It is so kind of her to say it wasn't a burden to do this jury service, because I don't know if many people after 10 weeks of being in that courtroom would say it wasn't a burden. I really appreciate her saying this was a good experience. It wasn't a burden for me to do my civic duty, because I don't know if I could say that. It wasn't a burden for her. It was, ma'am, I appreciate you, because Lord, that's true. All of you are saying she is a lawyer. And so maybe it was delightful to be in the courtroom. That courtroom seemed hot though.
It was an incredible experience. Really, I really enjoyed being there. It wasn't a burden at all. The deliberation part for me was a little overwhelmed because of the pressure of having someone's life in your hand. But the crowd outside or influence from outside, none of this came to me. So I was clear in my mind, just focus on her and the case and the evidences we have. But for me, it was a great experience, and I'm happy that I feel good about what we did. I'm confident that she's innocent, and I really, really hope the pressure that they had in this case now is transferred to John O'Keefe family, and justice for him, like new investigation, whatever needs to be done.
I appreciate that. I don't know what is happening. Sorry, y'all. The YouTubes are like, oh, we're going to automatically play things. Wonderful. I really appreciate the juror interviews. Paige Jade said, why is this interview so late at night? I have no idea. I have no idea how these interviews came about. They just started talking to her. But this was within 24 hours of the verdict being rendered. And I wanted to take a look at the interviews closest in time to when the verdict was rendered before. I mean, the more you talk about a thing and the more you start to look in a thing, the further you get from the experience. So I was looking for the interview closest in time to that experience. Sarah asked, have I ever been called for jury service? I have. Not since I moved, but I have. And I went and sat for a few days. And then I got into the courtroom and they said, we know you. And I was like, hi, you do. Can I go now? But I have not served on a jury. I would like to, but I have not. So, and I would imagine it would depend on the type of case. I would love to do a grand jury, but then I would have to be like, but the law nerds are going to be mad. The law nerds are going to be mad. They're going to be like, girl, where are you? So I wanted to pull the interview closest in time from Juror 11. She has given other interviews. I appreciate that she has had the opportunity to sit down for longer form interviews. We will link some of those below. But if you Google it, you will find lots of interviews with Juror 11 sharing her experience on this jury. I think looking at the statements from the anonymous juror, juror number 1, juror number 12, juror 11, really are all very consistent with each other. The jurors took their job seriously. They were conscientious in going through the evidence. They were respectful of each other. They were patient with each other. We saw the foreperson saying in one of their Boston Herald telephone interviews that when they had a verdict and then withdrew the verdict and then had a verdict, that one of the other jurors got cold feet and they needed to give them a little bit of time. And then all the jurors felt good about reaching the OUI verdict. And in the interview we just saw with Juror 11 saying that, yeah, she said she was drinking. We saw the video of her drinking. We were comfortable with that OUI verdict. And I hope that us going through the juror interviews not only gives you a look into their process, but a look into how seriously the jurors take what they did. This has been a chatty jury, not in a bad way, a chatty jury in that they've been accessible and pretty open, I think, with all the things that they have shared. And I appreciate it. I think it helps with the transparency. And I hope that it restores a little bit of, I don't know, humanity into this process of, look, these are jurors that came out of their life, out of their jobs, out of their home, out of caring for family, to hear all of this evidence and make a decision. And each one of them said there was just not enough proof. And they've gone further than that. They didn't just say there wasn't enough evidence. They said Karen Read did not do this. And we want there to be justice for John O'Keefe. We want them to continue looking at what happened. We want answers to what happened. And I think that really echoes not only my sentiments about the case, but yours. What happened? This investigation truly seemed to stop in its tracks very early on with Proctor, and we saw Proctor's interview on stream yesterday. We had a shoe, we had taillight, and we had her statements. Done. And they went no further in the investigation. And the jurors that we have seen talking said, but you should go further. You should ask more questions. You should keep asking questions, because the victim and his family deserve answers, and they didn't get it. And they have every right to be angry at that. I don't think their anger is directed at law enforcement. Maybe it should be, but also I'm not going to tell people how to grieve. I do not see a good investigation in this case. I don't know if there's opportunity for that to be rectified. But putting someone who can't be proven to have done it in prison for a second-degree murder or a manslaughter isn't justice. And it's also not answers. Because if Karen Read had been convicted, if that had happened, it would be a 10-year appellate process that probably would have asked the same kinds of questions, because there were issues in this case where we were sitting there going, what in the world is happening? So it still wouldn't have been done. And that's not an answer at all. So I hope it's not going to be local law enforcement, but I hope we will see some resolution or answers in this case. I don't know if we will. This is resolution of this prosecution. But I don't feel like I have all the answers. I don't know if you do. I don't know if we have all the answers. Ice Baby in the chat, this is an excellent point. There is still DNA out there. They came up with multiple different DNAs and some were unknown. And it doesn't seem to me that they ran those. So there are still other avenues. There are. I hope we have some answers. I just don't know if we will. And even if those answers are uncomfortable, the victim's family deserves wherever the evidence leads. That's the thing with an investigation. It can't be pointed in one direction. It has to be curious and open. And this investigation was not that. It was not curious. It was not open. And it did not run down all of the different avenues that it could have. And it was frustrating to hear yesterday Trooper Proctor saying, I mean, I wouldn't have done anything different. Even with all of this, gestures broadly at the internet. Maybe we could have looked at some other cars just to say we did it. there are still questions here. But seeing how the jury evaluated this case and conducted themselves and respected one another and respected the process, I think is incredibly helpful as a reminder that people are really trying to get it right. Jurors are trying to get it right. And I really appreciate all of them choosing to come forward and talk about this case. I can't imagine how frustrated they are as they go back and see some of the other stuff, because there's a lot this jury didn't see. And I wonder in the weeks to come if we will see them talking more about that. I'm sure some of them already have. And we might. And maybe we'll hear from other jurors down the road. We are going to get to some questions, but then we have to scoot because we have a members only live. 2-ish. 2:15. 2:15. Because we're going to have to do that. So, because I'm going to need to get some food. But let's get to some questions. I'm not even going to play the bumper. Tin and Neil asked a great question in the chat and said, what happened to the jurors' notebooks? Do they get to keep them? No. They go into the custody of the court, and then there are different ways that they are destroyed. So the notebooks are not kept by the jurors. So that is the answer to that. They do not get to keep them. And it's hard for the jurors because afterwards they're going to be like, well, what about this and what about that? They can't go back to their notebooks. So the notebooks will be destroyed. And Jess said, what about AJ on the radio? I simply do not have time today, unfortunately. I wanted to get through the juror interviews. I will keep it on the list. We will see. By the time I come back from seeing band, we might have more of AJ talking. So don't worry. We will get there at some point. B, I'm so sorry for your loss. B said goodbye to my Ponard Petey this morning after 17 years, which is very hard. I lost my soul kitty Albus at 17 too. It is very, very difficult. It is very difficult. The virtual juror said, I played trumpet. I love him. Also French horn. The French horns are fun. I love all the band kids here in the chat. It's fantastic. My kiddo picked upright bass because it's the biggest. That's so cool. And also that makes perfect sense. I picked drums because the music was much easier for me to read. So, Catherine says, I'm happy that we get a life update as well. It's needed. It's been busy. Summer is always busy in parent life, but this summer is unusually busy because at the beginning of summer or the middle of the year, we can talk about this more as we get into members, but Travis was going back and forth about whether he wanted to continue to try out for DCI this year or whether he wanted to wait till next year. He's going into his senior year, next school year, and whether he wanted to really be gone from the day after school got out till he's going to miss the first week and a little bit of school this next year, which everyone at the school was like, it's fine. But when I had initially looked at the trial schedule and the summer and everything, we had some other family activities planned because Travis was like, no, I think I'll wait till the summer after my senior year. And then his core reached out to him and was like, hey, buddy. So I know you had indicated maybe you weren't going to audition this year because he had done auditions last year and then was like, I'm not going to be away from home all summer. Maybe, are you considering that? Can you send can you just send a video? We'd really love if you would try out. And he sent a video and then they offered him a contract based mostly on what they saw from him last year. And he was like, I do want to do this year. I was like, okay, then reassess. We're going to reassess our summer. So Imogen Imi said, I picked marimba. I love the marimba because it's like a piano, but more badass. Running that thing up a ramp at WGI in Dayton, though, not the most thing I've done. Dude, getting front ensemble out onto the field is a whole thing. Our band in high school did not have front ensemble like that. Is Travis being yelled at by the cats on FaceTime? Yes. Yes, he is being told loud, very loud on FaceTime. Fluffy Buddy said, my MIL is looking forward to Idaho. Her first EDB. Idaho is going to be a long trial, which is why we are going to build in breaks as we can over the next few weeks, because Idaho is going to be a very long and heavy trial. Samantha said, please share how you keep trial notes organized by date. And then I have kind of a system with highlights and lines of things that I think are important. So it's truly just by date and then by witness. They are not as organized as like my documents are, because it's just in real time. Are you working with food crew with the court? I'm not. My wife and I did 2 weeks of food crew for the Academy in 2017, 2 of the hardest and most fun weeks we ever had. I'm not, because of trial this year. I just do not have time. I'm hoping that perhaps next summer I will have a little more. This summer has been a sponsor a meal type of summer. Casey Cat, thank you for the gift of memberships. To all the new members, we are going to go to members only. Actually, let me populate that so that, oh no, I can't redirect it. So never mind. I'm going to set it at 2:15 because I do need to go eat real quick, but that will be in your member spaces. You will see the link. So for all of you that are new members here on YouTube, you'll see it in your community space. Shamo said, Emily, have you looked at Officer Barros's interview? No. He said the Commonwealth knew before trial 1 about him seeing the taillight crack not broken, but they did not disclose to the defense. That's not good at all, because I don't know how Barros would know they didn't disclose it to the defense unless the defense said. There were a lot of evidentiary issues, like a lot of them, but I have questions. There were a lot of evidentiary issues in this. To everyone who gifted memberships, thank you. To everyone who's not been on a members only live, welcome today. And you'll get to see some of the older ones back there. Susie Q, thank you. You are sharing sentiments that many have shared. And yes, that many have shared. So I'm glad we got to the Boston Herald article today, where you see the jurors asking for someone to look for more. Brent Wichick, good to see you. Do we know if the musical chairs with the jurors affected who was in seat 1? It did not, to my understanding, impact who was in seat 1, because they called the juror numbers and it was further down in the jury box that people moved around. And I think some of those in the courtroom at the time talked about who moved around, and it was higher numbers. It was not a single digit juror. Let's see. Can you please interview Miss Little? I will ask, for sure. We will see if people choose to give interviews or not, but I would love to talk to Miss Little, 100%. Lynn says, it's my birthday, spending it with EDB. Happy birthday. Good to see you. Eloy said, we know why they didn't ask some of the questions. Fair. Trevor said, why would the feds announce to their targets of an investigation that it's closed? And this is why I just wonder if they said, look, part of it's closed. It seems that the feds' accident reconstruction part of whatever investigation they were doing with ARCA is done. And that's fair. And that's completely fair. Heather Fairfield said, as a Canton resident, between Karen Reed and Sandra Birchmore, it's impossible for many of us to trust our local police anymore. It's honestly scary. It's got to be incredibly frustrating. And I don't know if bringing in a new police chief will help. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. But there's a lot that needs to happen, I think, between Canton and its residents to be transparent. And there's a lot of trust that needs to be earned back. And that's a hard thing. Thank you, everybody, for the gift of memberships. We got lots of new members today who are just going to be like, let's go. Ross said, never saw the EDB DCI crossover coming, but here we are. I work for a DCI sponsor and we'll be there at the show Friday. If you see me, Ross, yell and say hi. Former Carolina Crown drum major. Ross, you're a badass. Also, we have a couple Crown members in the chat. Ross and everybody else who wants to talk band, bring it in. The show reveal for Crown, don't tell Cavaliers. The show reveal for Crown this year is so fucking fire. The red, oh my God, the point of no return, the glimpse of the props, the way that Crown brought their logo in at the end of the show reveal, it was so good. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, go on Instagram, look for Carolina Crown. Their show reveal was just fire, just fire. So if you see me running around in my fax hat, for sure yell and say hi. I'll be sweaty. It'll just be. But I'm really excited to see the show. I really am. And I know that Crown has always been up there on one of the cores that whenever we go to DCI shows, Travis will get Griffin does not ever want to see all of the shows. Travis would get the list and be like, I don't want to miss Phantom. I don't want to miss Crown. I don't want to miss Cavaliers. It was on his top 3. So it was a huge thing, but thank you so much for that. To everyone else who will be there, just yell Emily and I will turn around and say hi. It'll be great. Rachel said, question, I have been in a mock jury a few times and always wanted to know, 1, do both sides participate or is it just one side pretending to do both? 2, at what part of trial prep did they decide to set up a mock jury? Thank you. So it is much more rare in criminal cases to have a mock jury, but sometimes they do. I don't think I've ever seen prosecutors set up a mock jury. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen. Mock juries are normally held by one side only. I have not seen ever a mock jury where both sides have done it together because it would give away what they're testing out. They're normally testing something to see how it will resonate before they do it in front of a deciding jury. So they don't want to give away their strategy to the other side. And it is much more common in civil cases. I don't know how civil cases decide if it's worth the money on a mock jury unless there are certain things they're not sure that they want to put in or not. But I have never taken part in a case where we've done a mock jury or a case where a mock jury was even ever on the table, because a lot of the trials I took part in were, hey, are you in trial right now? No. Can you do this tomorrow? It's in this judge's court. Thanks. So some trials were my own, some were handoffs that your prep time is anything from 30 minutes to prepping while jury selection is going on. So I don't know how civil attorneys make that decision. I would imagine it normally has to do with testing. Let's see. Bird is the word said, sorry to be off topic, but my job just added basic legal doc intake to my responsibilities. And my boss was like, I know reading subpoenas is boring. And my little law-nerd heart is so happy. It's like, what are you looking for? No, you can't have that. Yes, maybe you can have that. Yes, no, yes, no. Look, law becomes much more fun when you stop looking at legalese as like legalese and start looking at it as tea. Ooh, what are you asking for? Ooh, why do you want that? Ooh, what do you think is there? When you embrace just being curious or nosy, however you want to frame it, it's great. Serena said, y'all, because of EDB drinking coffee and then sipping her water this entire time I have been a member, I now drink coffee and water. Never did before. Sorry, had to share. Look, if we can keep the law-nerds hydrated and caffeinated, we're winning, because hydrated is key for the skin. Fancy said, delighted how ethnically diverse the jury was. Juries should reflect their communities. And Boston is a very diverse community. Juries should reflect their communities. 100%. Matt, the future ESQ question, will your new streaming service be public, not at launch? Because then there's a lot that goes into load balancing and making sure it works. We are going to roll it out for us and go from there and see what that looks like. But we need to see what that looks like first. But because we are building it out for our particular needs, but we will see. I'm not saying no forever. Valley Girl asked, Emily, what's your opinion on professional juries? If you talk to lawyers, law enforcement, or anyone who's been in the criminal justice system for a very long time, you will see that some things stop shocking you. And I think members of the community are a better touch point to the community than professional juries. I do think there are ways to write the jury instructions so that they are more clear, but I think our system is built on members of the community. And lawyers should respond to members of the community in the way they present cases, the way they argue cases. What jurors will tolerate or not should reflect the community. So that's what I think. EDB, I wonder if you ever kept in touch with any jurors after long, difficult trials. I did not keep in touch with jurors. A, they keep in touch with each other very well. B, it can be an awkward thing. Also, a lot of my trials, I was like immediately into the next trials. So if people would even email, it would be so far down, shocking, Emily. It would be so far down the road before I see it. But I had jurors reach out and say, thank you. But no, we didn't keep up. Though I had, jurors ask out attorneys on cases I was on myself. I had friends that I know that married jurors from their cases after they were on the case. That's how they met. I know attorneys that stay in contact with jurors. Most often I see jurors staying in connection with each other more than with the lawyers. So that. All right. Explain this at EDB. Do you think the defense ran a shadow jury throughout the trial for their own info and feedback? I think the internet kind of did that for them. I don't think they needed to pay for it. I also don't think it's something they would have paid for, given that they were constrained in the second trial. All right, we need to book Members Only Live. We need to do it now because our Members Only Live is going to be at 2:15. So I'm going to go grab food real quick, and I will see you guys in about 15 minutes. Well, a little more than 15 minutes next week, and I will keep you in the loop on the app. Next week, we should be moving into other cases. That is my goal, with a quick update on the podcast on Monday, asterisks. I'm very optimistic, but it's going to depend on travel. So asterisks on if that will get done, but I'm hoping to have a quick update for you guys on some things on Monday, but we will be rolling into other topics next week. Let me look at the calendar real quick. So if you don't have the Law Nerd app, now is the perfect time because schedule is going to get a little wonky between now and our next live trial and my travel. Next week is also going to be a little bit of a shorter week because we're rolling into the 4th of July holiday, and Griffin has repeatedly reminded me that I'm always in my office. And so I have to prove to my kiddo that I'm not, in fact, always in my office because he would like to spend some more time, and so would I. So as we roll into next week, it'll be a bit shorter, and then we will get back into our more normal weeks before we get back into trial, because then it's going to be August before we know it. And so we're going to make sure we keep up with the cases we're keeping up with, and that we also keep it cute, because I am very mindful that the Koberger case, the judge said be prepared to go to trial. If that goes to trial in August, that is going to go through August, September, October, and November. It is going to be a very long trial. So I am going over to members only. Members, I'm going to put up a link for you in just a moment once I sign off here. Everyone else, I will see you on Tuesday. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being Law Nerds. You guys are amazing. I will see you all soon. Have a good weekend. Get some stuff done. I know it's been a long trial and there is work you need to catch up on. Trust, I was up way too late last night catching up on things that I had been needing to do for work that hadn't gotten done because trial. And I will see you soon. You guys are the best. Thank you, Law Nerds. Have a good weekend and try to stay cool. It's really fucking hot. Bye. Thank you for joining me. Make sure you don't miss a live stream or any of the updates on the cases that you care about most with the Law Nerd app at lawnerdapp.com. It's a free download on iOS and Android, so I can keep you in the loop, because you never know when something's going to pop off. Thanks for being here, and thanks for being a Law Nerd.